What makes an application data intensive? Well, today almost all applications depend on one way or the other on data. All apps are data apps, if you will. But when we think about the requirements for an application, we see that the data requirements today become more and more rigorous, and that's the sign of data intensity. The term data-intensive application was coined by Dr. Martin Kleppmann. Think about the primary challenges in your application. If those are compute resources, CPU, storage, networking, then you're dealing with a compute-intensive application. But if you're worried about the speed of data ingestion, the query complexity, the latency of your data processing, the volume of the data, you're dealing with a data-intensive application. Through the rise of the cloud, the ability to scale out rather than scale up, separation of storage and compute and serverless architectures, combine this with a more data-centric and data-driven approach, you see how our challenges are moving from computing towards the data. Data intensity depends on many factors. For applications, important attributes that drive the intensity of apps are shown here. The size of the data, are you dealing with gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes? Query complexity, the number of joins in your queries, the query latency. What is your ingestion speed and volume? And what are your concurrency requirements? How many users are hitting your app? And while intensity grows in each of those attribute dimensions, it is really their combination that increases challenges exponentially. Working with a large data size presents its own set of challenges, but reducing latency in light of growing data size, while more users are issuing more complex queries, now it's getting really intense. Yet, that is exactly the challenges many applications face today. This is not an academic exercise or a new crouton on top of the buzzword salad. Data intensity is real. And SingleStore solves data-intensive problems every day. From supporting thousands of users at Uber, or providing dashboards to 40,000 users at a Tier 1 wealth management firm, performing streaming analytics on 300,000 events per second at Comcast, ingesting and analyzing data from 1.2 million smart meters, or handling 100 billion events per day for IoT asset management at Armis. SingleStore helps you to thrive in a data-intensive environment. I invite you to visit us at SingleStore.com and calculate your data intensity score based on the 5 dimensions I mentioned. Find out how your data intensity stacks up against that of other organizations. And there are other attributes as well that affect the intensity of data in applications and in the organization overall. How many data sources are you dealing with? How much data movement? What degree of automation do you have in your processes, and are your analytics primarily descriptive or predictive, forward-looking? The important point I want to make is data intensity is a good thing, and it is also inevitable. Now, how you deal with it, that becomes differentiating. You want to be in a position to take advantage of data intensity, not succumb to it by increasing complexity. But unfortunately, that is the reality for many applications today. You might start out with a single operational database, but you realize I also need to handle streaming data. And maybe some documents are stored in a NoSQL document database. Now you also want to provide analytics, and here comes a data warehouse. Things become to slow down, technology has friction when integrated, so you add a caching layer to speed things up. But wouldn't it be nice if the application had search capabilities? Oh, and I would like to provide user recommendations. So here comes a search engine and maybe Spark for AI and ML. And what you've created is a Franken app, a highly complex system with many technologies, a system that is difficult to maintain and nearly impossible to scale. We believe there's a better way, the SingleStore way, with a general purpose, cloud-native database for transactional and analytical workloads, with multi-model capabilities for documents, georeference data, search, SQL pushed down from Spark, built for speed. This allows data intensity without complexity, and that is a measure of digital maturity. Over the next minutes, you will hear from our partners, customers, and leading industry analysts how to navigate an increasingly data-intensive world and how SingleStore can help. You will see that this is not a buzzword. It is a real phenomenon that almost every organization faces today. It is also differentiating to not just cope with greater data intensity, but to take advantage of it. Next up, we sit down and chat with Chris Zobler, Vice President of Sales for Data and AI in the Americas at IBM, to learn about the IBM Data Fabric, its connection to data intensity, and how SingleStore can help. Hello, I'm excited to welcome Chris Zobler, Vice President of Sales for Data and Artificial Intelligence at IBM. Chris, welcome to our program, to our launch event. Tell us a little bit about your role and your team.
Thank you so much for having me. So as the Vice President for Data and AI across the Americas, my organization is built to do one thing. It is to help our clients unlock the value of data, especially our clients that are living with 30, 40 years of technical debt, where they have legacy applications built on legacy data silos. Now as they try to transform into this new digital era, trying to find ways to not just unlock that data, but to make better informed decisions and ultimately meet our clients where they are, making real-time impact and ultimately driving revenue.
Chris, we've just heard about data-intensive applications. The data intensity comes from increased data sizes, need for lower query latency, need to deal with more query complexity, more ingest rates, more user concurrency. And I'm sure everybody's living this and seeing this and feeling this data intensity, but it's also this legacy. You talked about you mentioned technical debt, legacy that comes with data, for example, silo data. Many customers talk about this. They have many different data stores. They use only a fraction of the data that is available to them. The IBM Data Fabric. Tell us what the Data Fabric is and how it helps with those data intensity challenges.
So Data Fabric for IBM actually helps unlock access to data itself. So I've been in this industry now 25 years or so. The challenges we're trying to address today are not unique and they are not new. They are the same challenges that we brought up 20, 30 years ago. Ultimately, as we start to look at the next generation of applications, as we look at the current state for hybrid cloud architecture, meaning most of the clients, regardless of industries, are operating across multiple public clouds, private clouds, hybrid clouds, the necessity to get access to governed, trusted data becomes mission critical. Historically, we saw a lot of this around business analytics and driving business intelligence solutions. But as you look at the maturity curve, and as organizations start to look at data science initiatives, and not just science projects, but actually building models in production that will make decisions on behalf of your organization, the ability to do that at scale in a trusted, governed way, not just on the access of the data itself, but on the models that we're generating, is something that IBM is uniquely positioned to do. And our data fabric architecture is designed to be deployed across multiple clouds. It is designed to help enforce and drive data governance, and ultimately to accelerate the build and deployment of machine learning models that you as an organization can feel trusted and can really stand behind.
So multiple data sources, multiple data repos, multiple clouds, and the data fabric brings it all together with governance. Where does SingleStore and a hybrid transactional analytical database, as we're sometimes called, we do OLAP, we do OLTP, we do real-time analytics, we do operational analytics. Where does a database like this fit into the data fabric?
I think it's one of the most exciting things and partnerships that we've started to talk through in recent years, mostly because the world is moving to this real-time, accelerated decision-making approach for everything that we do. We are the Google generation. Every answer to every question is one simple query search away. And that has now moved from getting instructions on how to build a grill, as an example, to getting real-time responses for things around customer care, around product placement, next best action. We just assume that those answers are going to be timely, accurate, and at our fingertips. So SingleStore, combined with the data fabric narrative from IBM, is not just something that changes the game from an architecture perspective, because to your point, there are multiple different workloads and multiple different architectures that will have to be brought together in order to build a seamless customer experience and to transform the way that we digitally engage with our consumers. But to do so in this next generation platform where we are designing and building to take advantage of open source and open standards is something that together we are uniquely positioned to bring to market.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about how you enable with this by augmenting the data fabric with this real-time analytics engine, if you will, that handles multiple workloads that customers can now take advantage of all their data, not just 10 or 20% of it. A conversation we often have with customers and partners is about ESG, about environmental, social, governance practices, and how their business impacts the world. There is an interesting connection here in the ESG conversation with the SingleStore IBM partnership. Tell us about that.
So ESG in the year 2022 has become not just a concept, but it's really front of house. This is the first year that our clients, big or small, have all started to publish their ESG principles. So when we start to take a look at breaking ESG down, again, the partnership that we have here puts us in a unique position to answer and address all three of those entry points. So from an environmental perspective, sustainability and ensuring that we are actually taking care of the planet that we all love so that our kids and our children's children can actually enjoy this planet as well is something that we will continue to strive for. The ability to actually bring workloads together, the ability to actually reduce our carbon footprint, especially around global operations where we have data centers across the planet, is something that every organization is looking to do. It used to be that the driver was cost. Cost is always still a key factor here, but now the ability to drive sustainability by reducing that footprint now helps organizations really answer the environmental part of ESG. The social aspect of this also now is the secondary piece that is also top of mind. When we think about social responsibility, we think about making real-time decisions and taking action, but doing so by removing bias, as an example, in some of the decisions that are being made. Whether it's credit cards, whether it's loans and mortgages, whether it's that next best action, being able to make those decisions in a reliable, safe, and trusted manner is something that the unpacking of the black box of AI has really brought to the forefront. So Data Fabric, again, IBM's Data Fabric strategy is to allow organizations to not just find and build new machine learning models, but to actually look at the way that we do model risk management at runtime, back to that real-time narrative. So that way, as decisions are made, we can explain why, we can do so in a transparent manner, and ultimately we can remove a lot of the bias that makes everybody a bit uncomfortable. And the last piece around corporate governance. Access to data, access to repositories is critical. It's why security continues to be at the forefront of many of the conversations we have around managing control. But as we look at organizations that are really moving through that maturity curve and going towards building machine learning models and algorithms in production at scale, access to that information and the ability to prove provenance and data lineage, again in this hybrid architecture world, is really difficult to do. So bringing all of these things together, environmental, social, and corporate governance challenges, and the necessity to do so in a real-time fashion, there is only 2 organizations on the planet that can bring that together, and it's SingleStore with IBM's Data Fabric that can help our clients transform.
Wow, I'm super excited about this partnership, about hearing about how SingleStore and the Data Fabric together really change the world, and change the world for good. And we're so excited and cannot wait to prove this and bring this to our customers and the world. Chris, delightful to have you here today, and thank you for sharing.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Oliver. And the one thing that I will make as a comment, as a believer, in the technology, as a believer in what we can do together, I would really encourage everyone to actually try the technology out itself. For those that have been building databases, for those that have been writing queries, that have been in this space, the unlocking of the true potential will be realized when you get your hands on the technology, try the digital experience, and prove to yourself that the technology is real. This isn't slideware, this isn't a PowerPoint presentation, this isn't vaporware. Try it. If you try it, you will believe it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Oliver.
Thank you again to Chris Zobler of IBM. Well, we promise you some great conversation with leading industry experts. So let's kick things off with our first panel of the day, IoT and cybersecurity. Please welcome Scott Chuffer, COO and founder of Nucleus Security, Benjamin Rowe, Cloud and Security Architect at Arcules, and Yatharth Gupta, VP of Product Management at SingleStore. Gentlemen, over to you.
Welcome to Revolution 2022. Today we have with us Ben and Scott. Ben and Scott are our customers. Ben, Scott, thank you so much for your time talking to us. This is one of my most favorite things to do is talk to our customers who use our product and see how what they're using our product and what they're doing. So why don't we start with some intros? Ben, why don't you go first? Tell us a little bit about Arcules and what you do at Arcules.
Sure, thank you. I'm Ben, and I am a cloud and security architect at Arcules. Arcules is an enterprise physical security platform encompassing a variety of different areas in a single control plane. We cover surveillance cameras, access control, IoT, and also artificial intelligence, to name a few.
Thank you, Ben. That seems like pretty exciting stuff, security. Scott, what about you? What do you do? What does Nucleus do?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here. My name is Scott Kuffer, and I am one of the co-founders and the chief operating officer at Nucleus. My background is doing work with folks in the US government. And out of that work, we came up with a cybersecurity platform that is responsible for managing vulnerabilities at scale and automation across the defensive landscape of cybersecurity. So basically big data aggregation across all of the security tooling in an environment, and then taking workflows and actions based on the data and analytics that we generate off of that aggregated data set.
That is very interesting, Scott. You speak about security and taking actions in data. Like, how do you see data at your company? Like, what does data represent? Is it a pain? Is it something that you use to derive intelligence? Like, how do you look at data in databases?
Yeah, data at Nucleus is extremely important, right? I mean, just at the core of our platform and the core of the types of challenges that we're trying to solve for our customers is data. They are data related, right? So we integrate with hundreds of third-party vendors and aggregate data from all of those different data sources, and then provide our own enriched data sources on top of that, right? So we have our own algorithms, and we provide threat intel and those types of data feeds to be able to actually go in and manage the data across an organization. So what we're looking at is not just from our delivering the service for our customers, but also how we can generate data out of that to provide better and faster time to value for our product teams, for our own internal sources, so that we can provide, essentially the speed of our business can increase based on, we don't want to ever have to wait for analytics and for answers to questions. And so not just good data hygiene, but also the ability to deliver and grab and analyze that data at scale is a huge part of our business.
For database vendors like us, when you say things like, time to insights or the speed of analytics, that is music to our ears. It's something we hear a lot from across the board, like data has become more and more powerful, and people want to mine that data, get that intelligence, and they want to get it in real time. Ben, how about you? How about Arcules in databases? Like, where do you guys use databases? What do you look for in a database? Is it speed, security? What do you look for?
Sure. So when we look at databases, we actually look at scale. And scale is a little interesting. It's not like this kind of fixed point in time, because it's very dependent on what you're trying to do with the data. But we kind of split it up into both kind of three sections: ingestion, storage, and also the query kind of concept of that. And a good example is how we use your product today. So we actually use this inside of our video timeline component. In order to be able to gather that data, we ingest over 100,000 pieces of data per second today in our system. And that's all done in real time. And then when the clients go and fetch that data, as they're fetching it, they're collecting their bucket of data, which normally compromises of millions of rows. And then we're actually doing real-time gap island analysis on that data. So basically what's happening is we've managed to tune your database basically to be able to provide this real-time insights into the video data with almost no lag, providing a huge value to our customer base. And it feels like it's an on-premise system in the cloud.
Thank you for that, Ben. That is amazing. You know, one of the most rewarding things about my job is we build technology, but to see its real-world applications in a diverse set. You know, we're talking to both of you. You're on the security side, but to see the diverse set of applications is pretty exciting. You know, we always want to learn from you guys on, you know, how we are helping your company, not just you know, the technology, but also on the business side. Like, to the both of you, and maybe Ben, if you want to go first, like, how has SingleStore shaped your business? Like, what can you do today that you couldn't have done before? Or is this something you were doing before and was it slow, or how has it changed your business?
So this project specifically that I talked about was actually greenfield. So at the time although we had a solution, it wasn't really providing exactly what we needed. So this is more of a rip and replace kind of feeling for this. But ultimately, this helped bring our vision of this on-premise feel of a product into the cloud. Reducing that lag. I mentioned all those queries, millions of data sets or millions of records that we have to run through with that real-time analysis. That's all done sub-second in real time, on top of the ingestion happening simultaneously. So finding a database to provide that, where we're able to provide that speed and also reduce the stigma that many companies have around moving on-premise solutions into the cloud, that was really, really powerful for us.
That's you know, very interesting, because when we build the database, those are the things, some of the things that we index on very heavily, right? Like, we want to make sure our analytics is fast, because we fundamentally believe that if you can't get the answers when you need them, then it's you know, you're losing value. We fundamentally believe that ingestion in our distributed system should be very, very quick, right? Like, you shouldn't have to wait for getting data into SingleStore and getting the answers. So thank you for that, Ben. Scott, what about you? Like, how has this changed Nucleus's business?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey, because when we first started going down this path of how do we process, you know, millions and billions of vulnerability records at scale, we had two main problems. The first was that all of the data was relational to itself. And so, you know, traditional kind of big data style data warehousing or you know, kind of NoSQL style solutions just weren't really great applications for what we were trying to do. And so we were trying to figure out how we could solve this gap of, well, all this data is relational and should be stored relationally, but we also need to be able to do analytics on that information, and we need to be able to do it really fast, because the last thing that you want is to be processing vulnerability information where, you know, is essentially just windows into how people can attack you, and to not be able to respond fast enough just because it took you 6 hours or 8 hours to process and to like kind of have it run through its pipeline, right? And so when we were looking at how to do that and how to accomplish it, we were kind of in a tough place, right? Is how do we actually solve that, right? And that's where finding SingleStore, was called MemSQL at the time, was actually what really drove our ability to scale a lot faster, and our business has been able to grow really rapidly, because we were able to abstract a lot of that harder work of how do we solve some of these scale challenges with some relational data sets, and being able to do that in like Ben said, in sub-seconds with large volumes of data, right? If I'm processing 50 million vulnerabilities a day, I want to be able to say, oh, well, let me pull all of the analytics off of that, and then we want to be able to serve it extremely fast to the end customer, so that we can provide that data any time of day. So that way, you know, if some sort of incident happens, you're not waiting on your vulnerability information, which is the last thing that a system like ours would be able to deal with, right? We want to make sure that all of that data is in real time and available to every customer. And so that's the big difference for us, is being able to do that. And we're talking about scales of 100x more, you know, more speed in delivery of the service.
That is, again, like I said, some of these things are just fantastic to hear. I got to be honest, when we build this database, we do build it for speed, we do build it for ingestion, for analytics to serve a purpose. But when we see the applications, right, like you're building security software that's going to help, in some cases, save lives, in other cases, prevent people from being hacked. So, it's very, very rewarding for us to hear some of these things. One final question, this is my one question rapid fire to both of you before we end. When you think about SingleStore, what is the one word that comes to your mind? Scott, if you want to go first.
Yeah, this was actually a tough one, right? Because there's a couple sort of adjectives that I could use to think of when I think of SingleStore. But the big one that probably is the most impactful or the most relevant is actually just easy. It's very easy to use, and because it ties in so well with a traditional relational, SQL syntax, it makes it really easy to go in and not focus on the database and the data structures being the main limiting factor. We can focus on the architecture or focus on the query tuning. We don't have to focus on learning crazy systems that don't really make a whole lot of sense.
No, again, that is, easy is what we strive for. Easy is often hard. And the fact that, customers appreciate the fact that they didn't have to learn a new system is, again, very, very nice for us to hear. Ben, what is the one word that comes to your mind?
For us, it's scalability. That was the biggest thing for us as we grew. We looked at many different solutions. That was what stuck with us. Definitely, I get the easy as well. I 100% agree with Scott on that. But the scalability was the critical component for us as we move forward.
Thank you, Ben. Scalable, when you say our database is scalable, that is music to our ears. In today's day and age, when apps go up and down, we design our database to scale with your needs and both scale up and scale down. This has been super fun for me talking to you guys, seeing how you use SingleStore and seeing how it helps you out. I want to thank you very much for your time. And we look forward to our partnership with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott, Benjamin, and Yatharth for that great look at the IoT and cybersecurity industry. Up next, I am thrilled to introduce John Foley, founder and editor of the Cloud Database Report. And joining him is Shirish Thota, Senior Vice President of Engineering at SingleStore, to talk about the current state of the database industry and where it is headed. John, Shirish, take it away.
Hi, I'm John Foley, editor of the Cloud Database Report, and thanks for joining us. I'm here today with Shirish Thota, SingleStore's Senior VP of Engineering, to talk about some of the latest trends and developments in the world of cloud databases. Shirish, it's great to see you today.
Likewise, John. It's a pleasure to talk to you today.
Shirish, there are three things that I really want to cover in this conversation. First is convergence, two is real-time applications, and third, growing complexity. How does that sound?
Fantastic.
Okay, good. So let's get into this. First, we're seeing growing convergence in data types and workloads. Of course, SingleStore has a lot of experience in this space with its unified database model. And we're seeing other vendors now begin to run transactions and analytics on the same platform. So part A to the question is what's driving this trend? And then part B, what are some of the latest things that SingleStore is doing to advance it?
That's great. So to answer that question, I'm going to take a few steps back and look at the history of why it evolved to this divergence, right? The significant amount of divergence, to your point. In the early 2000s, when we started building more and more internet scale applications, there was a pressure on relational databases. Relational databases were great with single node offerings. There was a need to enhance the scale, elasticity, and high availability of these applications. And so there's the whole revolution of non-relational, NoSQL movements that has begun with that. What ended up happening was that, unfortunately, it came with a trade-off. The trade-off was to do away with the functionally rich query processing and ACID guarantees, and then go to a schema-less, unstructured data, but a massive scale and elasticity, right? And now, applications are increasingly demanding the need for both of them. The only way to do it today is to move the data from a relational to non-relational or vice versa, and having more application complexity. So that whole dichotomy is under a significant amount of strain. So that's one trend that's converging the relational, non-relational into distributed SQL effectively. On the other hand, when you think about OLTP, OLAP, the analytics and transactions, which is how much writes and reads do you have, how complex your queries are. And there's a spectrum for OLTP and OLAP. We want to converge them because the businesses want real-time access to their insights. And so the minimization to insights from the time when a piece of data enters, a transactional piece of data enters into the application, to when a business wants to gain insight, there is a significant amount of business pressure, once again driving the convergence for OLTP and OLAP to come together. I think these are the two major trends, I would say.
Yeah, all right. And then some of the latest things that SingleStore has introduced recently help advance the state of the art here.
Yeah, we are excited to announce a lot of our announcements, capabilities in this direction. We are moving in the direction of providing the best of multi-model distributed relational foundations and with a significant amount of scale. Features such as workspaces really converges in that direction. We are enhancing, bringing analytics closer to the data with features such as WebAssembly, like running WASM modules closer to the database engine. And so those kinds of features are helping us further strengthen our position as a leader in this space.
Now, Shirish, you mentioned real-time data a moment ago. And as you know, real-time analytics is something that I wanted to ask you about here. So we've been talking about real-time data for years in this industry. Yes. And yet there's so much activity now. It's showing up in different types of applications. Why now? What's driving this?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, think about the hybrid transactional analytics, the HTAP models. They have been there for quite some time, as you referred. What has changed is, again, the business pressure for time to insights, right? Which is what is called as real-time analytics, effectively. That is the business side of the equation. On the architectural and sort of like the new age way of building databases, there are a couple of things that have helped us in this direction. Number one is cloud. And when you think about the economies of scale in cloud, the architectural evolution such as decoupling compute and storage, they really help in the direction of putting all kinds of data in one place, attaching different kinds of compute to this data, and then gaining different kinds of insights. So cloud has certainly helped advance this. In addition to cloud, there's also a massive amount of architectural enhancements in sort of how we build databases. It's no more the case that you have the textbook database architectures of the 90s, right? Today, your queries are compiled to LLVM. There's a lot of hardware primitives. Significant enhancement has been made in the way data is stored as columnar and how you do vectorized execution, how query engines take advantage of that formats, etc. I just want to leave with the fact that SingleStore has enhanced in this direction significantly. We've made a Sigmar paper too, where we talk about how we build, seek, and sort of like operational latency performance without losing the scan performance that are needed for analytics. Right?
Well, that sounds great. Now, it also, I sometimes think of real-time analytics as having been for large enterprises, but it seems to be increasingly mainstream. So I guess the question is, can more types of businesses begin to implement real-time analytics and applications?
I certainly think so. You know, large enterprises are focused on making sure that there's lesser complexity for their developers, as well as time to insights, of course. And that reasoning applies to SMBs and any kinds of business, really. Now, I'm going to be flying to Seattle in a few hours. If I get a digital offering that doesn't take into account my location, even if it is an hour's delayed, it's a useless kind of an offer, right? They failed at it, and any business has that pressure.
All right, so the third topic that I wanted to cover here is complexity. We're seeing just a lot of choices in terms of tools and platforms, more than 800 different databases out there now. So that's an opportunity, but it's also a challenge. And so what can businesses do to manage this growing complexity in the world of data?
Yeah, and it's really not sustainable, right? When you think about those many databases, the thing that we encourage our customers is to look at where their enterprise architecture is and what are the needs of their applications to begin with. Most of the applications, in fact, I bet 90% of the apps on your mobile phone really require and have a certain characteristics. A few of them include things like how much volume of data is coming in, how fast is it coming in, what is the latency requirement. Most of them are real time, like they want single digit millisecond kind of latency requirements for operational and analytical. And then finally, how many concurrent users do they want to serve, right? And when you put all these factors together, there is a new concept that evolves, what we call as data intensive application. Each of these customers are enterprise customers or SMB customers, whoever, they need to think about these concepts and build new age applications in a different way.
Well, this idea of data intensivity is interesting to me, but how can business and technology teams know how that exists within their own environments?
Yeah, so we actually at SingleStore have built a calculator where you type in some of your questions, answers some of our questions, and it kind of tells you how data intensive your application is. And it kind of nudges you to think about simplicity.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, Shirish, thank you so much. It sounds like there's so much going on. Best of luck to you and to the team, and to all SingleStore customers as they move in this direction of speed and with less complexity.
Once again, thank you, John. It was really great talking to you today.
Thank you both for that incredibly insightful perspective on the constant movement happening in the industry and how to minimize the overly complex when it comes to your database and tools. As we continue through our data intensity track, I'm excited to hand it back to John Foley. Joining him is Christoph Malassa, Managing Consultant and Head of Analytics and Intelligence Solutions at Siemens, as well as Mauricio Aristazabal, Principal Data Architect at Impact.com. John, back to you.
Hi, I'm John Foley, editor of the Cloud Database Report, and thanks for joining us. I'd like to welcome everyone to this conversation with two SingleStore customers, Siemens and Impact, about the innovative work they're doing to build newer, better, and much faster analytics applications using SingleStore's cloud database. We're going to discuss the new capabilities they're developing and also the business impact of their initiatives. So let me start by introducing Christoph Malassa, Head of Analytics and Intelligence Solutions with Siemens. Hey, Christoph.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Christoph Malassa, and as you said, I work for Siemens. I'm the head of the group called Analytics and Intelligence Systems out of Mannheim, Germany, and I'm really happy to be here today.
Hey, great, Christoph. And also Mauricio Aristazabal, Principal Data Architect with Impact. Hey, Mauricio, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing well, thank you. Mauricio here out of Santa Barbara. I'm the data architect at Impact.com, responsible for delivering analytics to a wide variety of clients, internal and external.
Okay, great. So let's just jump right into this. Thank you both for joining us here. Christoph, let's start with you. Can you describe your organization at Siemens and the data management or business challenges that you are looking to solve?
Yeah, so in my team, we build and run a platform called Pulse that is used primarily Siemens internally, but it's also available to the external market now, that is solving a lot of different business questions, to be honest. And so the challenges that we're seeing is that because we're getting more and more data from different sources, we also at the same time have more and more requirements coming to us when it comes to advanced analytics and also performance. So what we're essentially doing is we help our internal and external customers to answer the business questions that they have with the data that they have.
Great. Thanks, Christoph. Mauricio, tell us a little bit about your organization at Impact and the data management or business challenges you're looking to solve.
Sure. So we at Impact, we do partnerships and performance advertising. So we track impressions and clicks and sales, and then we correlate them. We calculate payouts. And we distribute funds seamlessly across from those brands to those publishers throughout the entire world. So we do this in 60 plus currencies. We also do attribution, we do fraud detection, we do brand compliance, influencer management, and several other ancillary products. So we work with just about every major retailer in the US, Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and lots of other worldwide brands. including some internet darlings, Uber, Airbnb, lots of them, and thousands of publishers and websites. And most of the newspaper sites that you may browse today are doing advertising with us. And we need to provide timely and fast analytics to those brands and those publishers, as well as internal customers. So that's my role.
Okay, thank you. Now, next question, let's get into the use cases. Christoph, maybe you could start by telling us the primary use cases that you've got running and that you're building, and also why you chose SingleStore to do this.
Well, it's actually a difficult question. So, Pulse as a platform has multiple, like hundreds of projects on it, and they all have different use cases. But if I had to break them down, we have analytics use cases, and then we also have surveys. So we run a lot of different surveys where we get data essentially from non-existing sources. So we have to ask people like employees, customers, suppliers to give us, the data that we need for analytics. And so we have all of these sources, SAP systems, data warehouses, data lakes, external sources, internal sources, and surveys. And so we collect all of that data, and then we want to run analytics. And the main challenge that we had in the past was that if we wanted to run analytics in real time, meaning that we don't have any data prepared for queries because we don't know what our users want. So they have a tremendous amount of flexibility. They can drill down as much as they want. They can slice and dice the data all online. And they also expect really, really fast response times. And I'm talking less than half a second. And so what we were looking for a couple of years ago was just the fastest relational database that we could find. And so that's, I guess, the answer to your question, why are we using SingleStore? Because we haven't seen anything that's faster yet. Okay, thank you. Mauricio, primary use case and why SingleStore?
Sure. So it does all kinds of stuff, but mainly reporting, both standard reports when people log into the website or the app or whatever, as well as user-created reports, ad hoc analytics, APIs, extracts, data science model training, as well as by key lookups for certain jobs. We chose SingleStore initially for its sub-second reporting capability, even in certain cases where we needed to join multiple large tables. It was able to do this efficiently via shard keys, which others didn't have. And we tested it out for all of those other cases that I mentioned, and it really checked all the boxes. So we have now, over the last 6 months, started to adopt it as our main data warehouse for everything we do. And it's also worth saying that most of our ingest is real time, which was another key requirement and something that others didn't do so well. And yeah.
Mauricio, I want to talk to you both about what your organization is able to do now on the new platform that you couldn't do before. You both mentioned really speed of analytics, I think. So maybe you could take this question first. What are you able to do now that you couldn't do before? And also maybe mention the business impact that has.
Yeah, well, the main thing is sub-second reporting. The stack we were in before, really, we, as much as we tried to optimize data structures and the SQL itself, we couldn't really get report runtimes to go under 2 seconds. 2, 5, 10 seconds in some cases, whereas with SingleStore, we've really been able to address all the different reporting needs in sub-second time, sometimes even sub 500 milliseconds. So that was the main requirement, be able to deliver a positive human experience and delight our customers. Beyond that, now that we've adopted it as our full data warehouse, we are able to serve all other workloads, including by key fast lookups from the same table, avoiding data duplication. And this is, in many cases, in tables that have many billions of records. So being able to just have data in one place and serve all kinds of different tenants and workloads is just wonderful.
And Christoph, same question for you, which is what can you do now that you couldn't do before? And maybe talk a little bit about the business impact.
Yeah, so initially the same situation, right? We now have the ability to do ad hoc analytics on data volumes that we couldn't do in the past. But then after we had that for some time, we were thinking, okay, what else can we do? And so we're now doing more and more advanced analytics live. So for example, if you have, let's say, a survey, multiple millions of responses, and you want to correlate questions. You can do this online. There's almost no delay. So things that had to happen offline are now available online to everybody with full flexibility. So just the analytics that you can now do give you way more insight. And it's difficult to measure that, of course, but this is tremendous for the business. And the second thing is process improvements for us. So for example, we can now do machine learning translation of comments in the database, right? So we get comments in any language, and then the database, so SingleStore uses machine learning that we can purchase from other sources, and it automatically translates a comment into any other language that we want. So there's no other processes involved. And so this makes it a lot easier for us to just innovate faster.
Yeah, well, speed of decision making and fast analytics seems to be a common theme here. Let's talk about what's next. Christoph, I'll start with you. Looking ahead, what are the next steps on your roadmap in terms of new capabilities or opportunities that you would like to pursue at Siemens with this platform?
Yeah, I think there's two main things. One is we want to increase data volume, so add sources that we just didn't add in the past because of data volume restrictions, so we get more insight. But then also increase our capabilities when it comes to advanced analytics that you can do online. So I have a survey topic that we're currently trying to build where if you have some results for you want to see a benchmark and you don't have benchmarks available, we can actually calculate on-the-fly benchmarks for yourself based on the structure of the subset of your customers, for example. So if you have a lot of customers from a certain country and you know that that country always is giving better ratings, then we can correct for that on the fly, and we can tell you this is where you should be compared to where you are, so you benchmark against yourself. And this is something that we can now do online, which is really interesting. So adding just more analytical capabilities.
Okay, great. And Mauricio, I'll let you wrap things up here. What about next steps in terms of new capabilities or opportunities at Impact?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, the next thing is workspaces. We're super excited about that. I believe it just went GA. So we currently use resource pools, but we'll be replacing those with separate workspaces for total separation of tenants and workloads. That way we can avoid one affecting another, especially our API workload can be exposed to certain bad behavior. And also that way we can grow and shrink these workspaces separately as needed. That way we can keep costs down while also meeting SLAs. So it's possible to fine tune the resources allocated to each of these tenants and workloads. So we're very excited about that. And so far we've been trying it out and it's working really well.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the potential for using some of the newer capabilities that SingleStore has just announced. So that wraps things up here. Mauricio, Christoph, thank you both for sharing your time with us, and thanks to everyone for joining us for this conversation.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Big thank you to John, Christoph, and Mauricio for sharing how they're powering data-intensive applications in the enterprise. Rounding out our track today, we're talking on the Fintech revolution, including cryptocurrencies, data management, and the power of real-time. Please welcome Dendi Suhubdy, CEO of Bitwyre, and Michael Zimberg, Chief Technology Officer of Digital Asset Research, as well as Dominic Ravita, Vice President of Product Marketing at SingleStore. Take it away, Dominic.
Thanks, Oliver. Digital disruption is accelerating, and in no other vertical outside of financial service do we see that. Fintech has always been the early adopter of new technologies, especially real-time processing, because literally every moment matters for winning or losing millions of dollars. And I love Dendi's t-shirt there, Bitwyre, every nanosecond counts. Absolutely. That decision velocity is the key thing that you have to make work in your business model. And so we're delighted to be joined today by two leaders in the fintech disruption, both in the cryptocurrency space, Michael Zimberg, the CTO at Digital Asset Research, and Dendi Suhubdy, the CEO of Bitwyre. Welcome, gentlemen. Michael, I'm going to start with you. So everybody's hearing in the news constantly about crypto, DeFi, Web3, blockchain, and there's quite a lot of volatility right now happening in the market. Some call this a crypto winter. Tell us a little bit about what digital asset research does in this, and how is this moment affecting your business?
Sure. Digital asset research is a provider of clean digital asset data, insights, and research for institutional clients. We're a provider to asset managers, banks, custodians, family offices, fintech firms, fund administrators, hedge funds, and venture capital firms. So we've been around since 2017, and we rigorously vet out noisy inputs for our flagship clients, which include Bloomberg, FTSE Russell, and Wilshire. We process 120 million trades on an average day, spanning up to 500 million on a really high volume day, and price 2,700 assets, which spans 30,000 pairs. We deliver a range of products. So these days, with all the volatility, our demand is, if anything, going up as people have more demand for accurate and clean data in this confusing space.
That's fascinating and quite impressive with the size of the numbers. And Dendi, so Bitwyre is a spot derivatives cryptocurrency exchange. Tell us a little bit about the business, how you founded it, and what is it like for you in today's crypto market?
Right. So we founded it in May 2019, and we realized that the next continuation of crypto is like a fully functional derivatives market. So we realized, why don't we build one, right? So that's why we're here, and we offer our institutional clients spot products as well as derivatives products. We're planning to offer virtual swap futures and hopefully soon virtual swap options.
That's fantastic. So Oliver spoke a lot about data-intensive applications and the characteristics of data intensity. Real-time processing stresses those dimensions of data intensity, especially in the businesses that you guys are in. So Dendi, tell us a little about the specific technical challenges that you have, the kinds of real-time processing challenges and data intensity that you're facing in building something that the world, one of the first cryptocurrency exchanges.
Right. So, for example, we face this problem with index computation, right? So this index will determine where or how derivatives would be settled, right? And since perpetual swap futures is a future that is rolling every 8 hours, we need to have this computation in an exact way, right? So we don't want a big whale to be able to manipulate the price on one exchange or the other, right? So we obtain def data and we save that, and we use our own formula to allow us to have a minimum amount of possibilities that this number might be manipulated by big whales on different exchanges.
Gotcha. So you've got to be able to do that across exchanges, you've got to pull in an enormous amount of data from different exchanges all over the world. I mean, give us a sense of how much data that is and what period of time you're doing that.
That is correct. So we're collecting a matrix of 200 data points times 3 across 500 milliseconds to 1 second. We generate around 3 terabytes of data per day, and yeah, we have 1 petabyte of data in our. So
wow, that's
we're collecting.
Tremendous. And Michael, with you for providing these spot prices or you're pricing each instrument, what is it like for you in terms of the technical challenge that you're facing and maybe even exacerbated at this moment with the volatility in that crypto market?
Sure. So we're also collecting from hundreds of exchanges, and in periods of high volatility, we've got to be able to load all of our trades that we want to use to perform our analysis quickly, because we have many pricing engines running off of that. One of the other things we do is every one of our critical processes runs in duplicate in an independent way. And that way we have much greater resiliency. So they don't know of each other, and if one fails, the other one keeps running. But what we do is insert ignore into the database, and that way we're able to have much better resiliency. We also have a lot of contention problems with all that happening, and we found that using a traditional database, we were on MySQL, we had a lot of outages in the past.
So what different technologies were you trying, Michael, to solve that contention problem with MySQL?
So we were trying to clear out the table all the time and other hacks like that. Like, let's only keep an hour of data in there and move to an archive for anything that needed it longer. But when it really got down to it, a Rowe store, it's more complex and worse on the locking side on what it has to do than how elegantly our shard key performs. So it really made sense when drilling deep into the design that a column store database made much more sense.
So with SingleStore, right, for those who might not be familiar, it helps to unlock that contention by distributing the data so that you don't have contention on the data, and also stores it in the right kind of structure, form follows function, in terms of being able to ingest data, transactional data in real time. You're getting this from all the exchanges, and analyze it in the proper form, which is the column store you structure. So SingleStore combines and unifies transactional, streaming, and analytical processing in one. And so Dendi, with Bitwyre, I mean, you are building this on bare metal. Michael, as I understand, is doing this totally in the cloud. Your deployment footprint looks a little bit different. So you were looking for something to have a real-time modern data stack that on bare metal. Why SingleStore for Bitwyre?
Right. So we've tried a couple of solutions in the past, but we found out like using SingleStore, it's migration-wise, it's easier. First of all, and the second one is we've combined the ability of like having this computation in Rowe store, but also with the time series data that we can save in column store. It's really nice for us to ingest and then save this data for real-time processing for these kind of computations, right? We don't know if any solution yet exists that would be able to ingest this amount of data for real-time usages for the client.
And how much real-time data are you ingesting on an hourly or daily basis? I mean, maybe it's spiking right now at this moment.
Right. So it depends. So for exchanges, there's a burst jitter pattern, right? So I could say roughly 2 megs to 3 megs per second. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of data that comes in.
Yeah. I want to thank you both for joining us, for sharing a little bit about your companies, Bitwyre, Dendi, and Michael from Digital Asset Research. I think that like what's happening in fintech, especially in the crypto markets, is stressing what's possible with technology, and you gentlemen are at the leading edge of that. And I think, thank you for your use of SingleStore. We're proud partners to do this along with you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again to our incredible speakers and guests for sharing their takes on the state of data intensity, the industry, trends, and insights. I hope you have enjoyed this breakout track for Revolution 2022. If you missed any session or would like to watch them again, you can find them on our SingleStore YouTube channel. And as we close out, I'm thrilled to share that SingleStore was recently featured in a GigaOM performance and TCO report, stacking SingleStore DB against major industry competitors including MySQL, Amazon Redshift, and Snowflake. Click the link to get your copy of the report.